again, do the fact checking, because there's also one of the things said about about the tax cuts he's so proud of is that in the end, the people who benefit the most from these cuts are.
Of course, 1%. That's how it always is. So
Hi ho, Kermit the Frog here, coming to you live. Welcome back to
Alright.
Unbasic Black.
I'm Basic Black.
I am May,
And I am Angel.
and we're going to talk as best we can about the RNC, Republican National Convention 2020, or as it was aforementioned named, Trump 2020, Republican National Convention 2020.
Is that the official name?
That's what it's been all week, was Trump 2020 and then Republican National Convention.
Wow.
I was like, okay, that's, and I checked with the DNC, and it was just the Democratic National Convention.
Right.
So, hey, we're in the same list almost. Yeah, sexy, and we know it. At any rate, so we promised in our last video that we would be as fair as we could be. Oh, but that was our promise, as we could be. As we could be. And I think that we accomplished being fair. It was tough, though. It was really, really hard. I will say that I watched a few speeches. I did not get a chance to watch Melania's. I still have nightmares from 5 times before about her last major speech, in which she pretty much said almost word for word everything that Michelle Obama said in her speech. So that was tough. I saw some highlights and it's like, yeah, okay. And
Her speech was more hopeful. She talked a lot about hope and things like that. So it was a interesting contrast to the rest of the convention. That basically painted
death,
Joe
doom,
Biden
gloom.
as the bringer of death and gloom.
Yeah, and if we elect him, that there will be anarchy in the streets, and people will be looting and rioting, and there will be wars and rumors of wars, and it's apocalyptic, and the world will almost end unless somebody does something, and that person is Donald J. Trump. He is the one who will bring us out of all of the things that the Democrats are promising through Joe Biden.
Are you being sarcastic?
I am.
You better be.
Very much so.
Or you're out of the herd. No, I'm just playing.
I can't be. Anyway. So I jotted down a few notes from Trump's speech, which was day 4 in the wrap up of the Democratic convention. That was it was interesting to get through, but it was kind of like all his other speeches. He's better, I think, when he reads the speech versus when he ad-libs.
Of course. Somebody else wrote that, and he added his Donald Trumpness to it.
Yeah. So his speeches are a lot better when he reads from the teleprompter versus when he goes off the cuff, like at his campaign rallies, and he just starts rambling some.
Well, anybody
some
can read
nonsense.
fiction.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
So one of the things that, several things in particular, he talked a lot. He talked about. I thought it was interesting. They brought up like the founding of America and all that kind of thing. So as we all know, there are 2 different versions to the founding of our country
There
and how
always
great
is.
it was.
Depends on who you ask.
Depends on
the
who you ask.
slavery days of yore.
Yeah. So if you ask the aristocracy that came to America, greatest country on the planet, we're starting over, we have our own new thing, and we're going to do better than we did in England, and those kinds of things. It's going to be a land of promise and opportunity for people who already have money. As for the rest of America, and then as for the rest of slaves, that was a different picture. At any rate, but America was a country, has a special purpose, was what Mr. Trump said during his speech. And he talked about how the Democrats wants to tear down what America has built thus far. Any comments yet?
I just find it very interesting how the Republican National Convention, in particular Donald Trump, and also Mike Pence during his speech as well.
I did get to see that one.
It fascinates me how much they can blame on Joe Biden when he's not the president. And he wasn't the former president. So how is it that all of this doom and gloom and horrible things are his fault?
Right.
He's not even in office. So
Right.
if you want to point the fingers, shouldn't you be looking at your own administration?
Right.
Because he doesn't have the power or authority to do anything right now. So how is it that he's done all these horrible things?
Right.
It's like, I don't think so. Because even prior to what I think they're alluding to, he wasn't the president.
Right.
So he did not make the final decision on any of that.
Right.
He may have contributed, he may have voted in a particular way, but he did not, he was not the one that was responsible for all of the events that have occurred over the last 4 years.
Correct. Okay, so then everybody has to do a montage of there's the good side and then there's the bad side. There's the good side and then there's the bad side. So I took the liberty of jotting down
Please.
what he said. So
Pray
you
tell.
got, if you vote for Trump, you will have high-paying jobs. If you vote for Biden, jobs will be sent overseas. And feel free to go through the fact-checking. There's a factcheck.org, and then as well as the C-SPAN and MSNBC has
A lot of people, as soon as that speech was published,
Yeah.
For those who did not watch it live, they immediately went on and started kind of talking about some of the a lot of the things that were completely untrue.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things, and I can't even I don't even want to go through them all because it's so many, but one that stood out in my mind in particular were some of the benefits and some of the strides that have been made for veterans. He took credit for a lot of that in his speech, but those were actually signed during the Obama administration. They just came into fruition years later because sometimes it takes time to get these things off the ground once they're signed into law.
Which is the case of a lot of policies that are enacted by previous presidents that the
Exactly.
following succeeding president benefits.
Right, exactly. Unless they decide to dismantle everything like pandemic response.
The American dream versus a socialist agenda. And there's a big old fact check on that one. Protect law-abiding Americans or give free rein to violent anarchists, agitators, and criminals.
Yes, he said that a lot.
Defend the American way of life, or allow the radical movement to completely dismantle and destroy it. Yeah. So there's that.
The only, yeah, go on.
Okay. So he talked about the tax cuts, and I remember when those tax cuts were implemented. And the things that he said about the tax cuts when he first started talking about this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna cut taxes and stuff. So that tax cut, and then it was like it was a tax cut, and average Americans saw an increase in their pay for I think it was about a year. He said when he was getting ready to implement this that you guys would be good to go for a year, but then after that the tax is going to go back up because we got to pay for what we just gave you.
Exactly.
And again, do the fact checking because there's also one of the things said about the tax cuts he's so proud of is that in the end, the people who benefit the most from these cuts are
Of course, 1%. That's how it always is. So that's why it's very important that you check these things for yourself.
Yeah.
Really know where this money is being spent and how it's being spent, because most of that was just complete rhetoric. And that's what he's notorious for. He's notorious for his rhetoric. A large majority of most of the speeches was just that, a lot of rhetoric. There wasn't any real outline for a plan. There wasn't any real design in place that showed us how he was going to make the next 4 years better than what he claims was a great last 4 years. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself while I'm watching this, where?
Right.
You go back to the beginning of his swearing in up until now. Tell me where?
Right.
When you have got the entire world, never mind, his cluster blank when it comes to coronavirus.
Right.
But every single aspect, please tell me where.
And things that he takes credit for are things that, like I said before, was implemented by previous administrations. And they're just now fully they just started taking effect once he got in office. But he
Right.
took credit for that kind of thing. And
Exactly.
that annoys me about any president who does that.
Right. You
I
take
always
credit
go
for
back
someone else's
to
work.
the hostages that were freed when Reagan became president.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Carter started that.
Right.
But Reagan took credit for it because by the time they were freed, he was in office.
Right.
And that just and I was 10 when that happened, and I knew, like, wait a minute, no, President Carter started that. At 10 years old, I know this. At any rate, okay. So
Why?
going on. So then there's the pro-American immigration, and he talked about the wall.
Which was also untrue. He said there was like 3,000?
300 miles.
300 miles of wall that has been built, where in actuality, all of the experts who have actually gone out to look at the wall says that it's about a mile. If that.
Oh, I read 275.
275 miles? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, let's
At any
check
rate,
again.
either way, though, it's not the wall that he promised during his 2016 campaign.
I'll put it in the I'll put a little thing here. And we'll see exactly what it is. So
Yeah.
we'll get it right.
But he made it sound when he was running for president the first time that he was basically going to build a moat.
Right, a moat around America, yeah, with armed guards
to keep
and
to keep the riffraff and the rapists and the murderers out of our country. But epic failure because the riffraff and murderers were shooting up schools. So just saying. Okay, so then there was a wall, and then talked about the love and respect for law and order. And he's always been a big law and order kind of guy.
but he doesn't.
His base.
Okay. Don't even get me started on that.
I know. But respect the law, respect law and order, respect law enforcement, and that he and his party, they respect law enforcement, whereas the Democrats and everybody who follows them do not respect.
That reminds me. That was another thing that he said that really, and I don't know if you can tell by my demeanor that I am over here fuming. And I'm trying really hard to maintain my composure and dignity, but anyway, one of the things that he had mentioned and kind of tried to brag about and, swing his, is that he had implemented a policy for automatic 10 years for anyone who destroys monuments. And then he claimed that immediately after he signed that, everybody stopped tearing down monuments. First of all, most of the monuments had already been taken down. Second of all, a large majority of the cities agreed to take down the statues, so there was no need for people to go out and tear them down. If you look around your city, you're not going to see those statues anymore. That had nothing to do with his quote-unquote 10-year automatic prison sentence for anyone who tears down a monument.
And yet some maniac can go through a city with an assault rifle and shoot unarmed civilians.
And be allowed to surrender the next day.
Yeah,
The next day.
the next day. At his leisure.
At his leisure, I guess, when he was done killing up a bunch. No, right.
Yeah, he had his breakfast. Yeah, okay, so back to it. So I did not have a chance to look it up, but you guys can do that and make some comments down below, okay? But he talked about something happened with the Georgia Electric Company that the guy like fired a whole bunch of people and then brought in immigrants or Mexicans, low-wage people, and then Trump stepped in and he got rid of the director of, I'm gonna say Georgia Power, and then all those people were hired back. So that one I got to look into, but I wanted to bring
hadn't
that
even
up.
honestly, I hadn't even heard
Yeah.
about that
Yeah.
until he mentioned
So
it.
I just
in
wanted
his
to bring
speech.
that up,
Yeah.
and so that you can fact check. 'Cause
Right.
we got to know these things. He talked about Big Pharma and how he's just the hero of American pharmaceuticals, and that people can get their drugs cheaper now because he was just so awesome at wheeling and dealing. And then he talked about the Veteran Administration and how he's created accountability and choice. Holding your tongue.
I'm not. I'm just. Yeah. Please go ahead.
He also talked about the forgotten inner cities. Wow. Black people were forgotten in America.
And how he has done more for black people than any other president since Abraham Lincoln.
Never
This
mind about Lyndon B.
Person
Johnson.
stood up in front of all of those cameras and the 2000 no mask wearing, not socially distancing people that
Minimal
go around
mask wearing.
kissing his ring people, the bobbleheads of the administration, and had the nerve to sit there and say he has done more for the African American community than any other president since Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, that's what he said.
He did. He said that.
That's what he said. And then one of the last things I caught is because after that it just kind of droned on and on and on.
They all kind of just droned on and on and on. It really was one long infomercial that ended with "Bye now." It was one long infomercial. You remember back in the day when they had the Home Shopping Network and it used to come on at night and there was nothing else to watch, or you might have been doing something else and just left it on.
Right.
And they just kind of go on and on and on about this product. That's what it felt like to me watching that.
Wow.
That's what it felt like. I'm like, this is the Home Shopping Network for Trump supporters.
Yeah. And the last thing I caught was the Middle East peace deal that he brokered.
That's what he said.
That's what he said. That was his idea. That was his plan. He did that.
Yeah.
He brought peace to the Middle East. Him and Jared. So, and then one of the interesting things, interesting, not interesting, and it annoys me to no end every time he would give a speech, his State of the Union, is the thunderous applause that goes on and on and on. So there was one time, I think I timed it, was about 15 seconds worth of applause.
I remember, and there are a few moments like that where
A lot of
they
moments.
4 more years and all this other crap that they were spewing, and it just again reminded me of infomercial where you have people and they turn on the little sign that tell you when to applaud, and I'm pretty certain that there was some of that going on. They're like, okay, everybody applaud, yay!
Stand up, too.
Everybody stand up. Okay, now everybody sit down and clap and start chanting 4 more years. Okay, 4 more years, 4 more years. It was so sporadic and just yeah. But, overall, they have to support their candidate. Yeah. And, what is the point of not having him as their nominee and then they don't support him? So at this point, they're going to support him regardless of the ridiculousness that he reads from these fantasy novels that he likes to write.
Right. I thought also caught the pieces of the first day and second day, third day, third day. At any rate, so another interesting thing was that couple in. Wow, I forget what state it was, but the lady, the man and the lady.
I know who you're talking about. The one, it was the couple. I think they were in St. Louis.
Protecting their homes from protesters who were paying them no mind
and just walking by.
And then they just happened to look over. Why are they pointing guns at us?
Right. And the people who believe that they're going to move into your suburbs and destroy it. And my problem, I mean, there are so many problems with that, but one in particular is, why do you make the assumption that we don't live in the suburbs?
Right.
Why do you make the assumption that we don't live in the suburbs? All of us have to be from some inner city ghetto.
Yeah.
So I was
Low income
like,
people will not be moving into your suburban neighborhoods. We're going to protect you from low income people.
fine. What struck me as just, but that's whatever.
That's
people.
akin to, you can serve us, you can sing for us, you can take care of our children, but don't you dare come through the front door.
Right. You can't sit at the table. You can't. You can have my scraps and sit under it
And make sure you say thank you.
yeah, but don't sit at the table, and don't, like she said, don't use the front door. Because that's not for you, you low income people. And here we are in 2020. This is 2020. The America that he claims is not racist and is so great. Not racist and so
they
great.
didn't say black people or Mexicans or Chinese or pick a race other than white. They didn't say that.
Nope, they did not say that. It was implied. So, you have anything else on there?
That's the gist of it all. It's all what was the one? Lock up your daughters, lock up your It was akin to that. It was a lot of lock up your house, lock up your daughters, and all that kind of thing. I was
Yeah, and there, you remember there was, I think it was like during the Jim Crow days, when there was a lot of propaganda and ads coming out against black folks, and they had a lot of ads basically depicting people of, well, in particular African Americans, as these demons making off with white children or white women. You remember those ads?
I'm glad I do not.
Yeah, they had ads like that, and that's what it sounded like to me. I'm sitting there watching it, and they kept saying, granted, you're right, they didn't say black people,
right,
but they kept referring to the inner cities. They kept referring to the protests. They kept referring to protesters and calling them lawless and all of that. And I'm like, how are they lawless when they have a right to protest? They are well within the law to protest. Now, we're not talking about those people out there breaking and looting stuff and all of that, right? We're not talking about that, and he knows it. But it's the individuals who are out there saying, we demand change.
Right.
They have a right to do that.
Yeah. And they have the right to be disruptive, because that's the whole thing about
That's kind of the whole
protests.
point about protesting, right? It's kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
So,
shake things up.
yeah, they have a right. So, yeah, there was so much wrong with the messages that were being sent, but it's a sign of the times.
And then the trippy part for me is, I think, was it One Night Only? One night only. All the black people they could find to speak
Oh
for
my
him.
gosh. Yeah, that was like the first night, and they ran out of black folks. So then it was like, okay, now what are we talking about? Donald Trump has done more for blacks than anybody.
And the things that they said, and I'm like, huh?
Yeah, I can say with a certainty they do have a right to support whomever they want to support.
That is true.
And they are well within their rights to do whatever they want to do. But I am looking you right in your eyes, saying I am so disappointed in you, so disappointed.
Yeah.
Because you should know better.
Right. I've grown through this administration. I have grown to understand why it is not a good idea to talk about politics at work.
Right. Because then you discover, and that's one of the things that I was talking about before, because somehow he still has a pretty decent amount of supporters. And I always wonder who these people are, because every time I talk to somebody about this, nobody says that they're a Trump supporter. However, when it comes to the polls, Because, you know, people like political correctness. They're not going to say that they dislike you to your face. But when it comes to the polls, when there's no one else around, nobody can criticize you.
Anonymous.
Nobody can ridicule you. Yeah, it's just like posting online. You can put comments that you would never say to someone's face because you have that anonymity. Now, when it comes to November, he could actually win this thing.
He could.
And that's a terrifying and frightening thought.
It is. It is. I was reading some of the comments underneath, because by then the speech was over, so people were making the comments while they were in
Right.
At any rate, I'm reading the comments and I'm just floored by they're like, yeah, thank God for Donald Trump and
I saw some of those on C-SPAN.
Jesus Christ bless Donald Trump.
That was on C-SPAN. I saw that.
Yeah. I'm sitting like, what?
You do not think it means what you think it means. It's like, are we? And you had mentioned, I think it was yesterday, you were talking about parallel universes.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like. It's like we are living through a parallel universe where we see things in one light and they see things. And when I say we and they, I'm talking about like Republican and Democrat, or, you know, people who support Donald Trump and people who do not.
Right.
And it's like we're looking at parallel universes. It's like, are we seeing the same thing?
Right.
Because it boggles the mind how you can interpret something that's so black and white and interpret it in such a phenomenally different way.
Yeah. I that floors me every time, because like they're talking about the same policies, right?
Right.
You'll hear the Democratic side and you'll hear the Republican side, and they'll do this and then they'll do this.
Right. And it's like you're
And this
talking
is
about the
like
exact
that.
same policy.
Right.
The
Yeah.
exact same policy. So.
Like he'll say, I did more for black people than any other president since
He
Abraham
doesn't
Lincoln.
believe
Like,
that.
are
He
you
just put that
kidding
in
me?
there so he can sound tough to
Right.
his bobbleheads.
And then to have black people say he's done more for us
Yeah.
than any other president. Like, did you forget Johnson? Did you forget? And it turns out Truman did some good stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really just infuriating is what it is. It's infuriating, but vote.
Yeah.
Just get out there and vote. That's what
yeah.
it boils down to, regardless of what your politics are. You know, like I said, and I said this in our previous video when we were talking about the Democratic National Convention, look at the facts.
Yeah.
That's it. Look at the facts. I mean, apparently it's up to interpretation, but look at the facts.
The truth is relative.
Yeah, look at the facts and vote with your heart, conscience, and what you want for the future of America. If you want 4 more years of Donald Trump, then vote for Donald Trump. If you want a change and you want to see our country
Be great.
I was trying not to say that. I was like, if you want to make America great again. I was trying not to say it. But
if you want America to live up to the ideals that are written down in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, regardless of what the forefathers' intent was, is
Right.
what they wrote down, is that
Yeah.
we are all endowed with inalienable rights, that
Mm-hmm.
we all can pursue life, liberty, and happiness.
Right, exactly. And if you feel that way, then you know how to vote. You know, I mean, you can, again, that's the beauty of being in a democracy. You can choose whichever vote you want to vote. But just remember that we are all, like she said, we're all endowed with these inalienable rights. You have a right to get out there and vote, and you have a right to get out there and vote for whomever you want to vote for.
Right.
Just think of how you want the country to be in another 4 years, and who's going to get that job done.
Right.
That's what I was trying to say earlier.
Yeah, it's just the thought that there are people out there who want us to go back to 1950.
And that's the thing that I keep thinking about when I hear people say, well, I want America to be great again, but when was it great and for whom?
Right.
Because that's a question that no one's been honest enough to answer. You know, no one's been honest enough to say, well, I want it to go back to 1950 because as a white American, I didn't have to worry about these people taking my job or whatever they feel that's being taken away from them, or whatever is going through their mind, because, we talked about racism before. It just makes no sense to me.
Right.
It still boggles the mind how, you feel that you're owed something and then get mad at other people for feeling like they're owed something too.
Right.
When we're talking about rights here.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So. I don't know. I don't know if we we were fair or not. But.
I think based off of the information we received, we were as fair as we could be. Because it's one of those things where, remove opinion, because we did talk a lot about what our opinions are, because we got opinions about everything. That's why. But we did talk a lot about our opinion, but also looking at the facts. During this convention, there wasn't a lot of truth spoken.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to talk about facts when you weren't given any.
Right.
You weren't given any plan, any real plan that wasn't in the land of make-believe.
Right.
You weren't given any real plan, and you weren't given any facts that you can look at and say, okay, well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
The only good point that he made was that we must do something.
Yeah.
That was the only good point that he made, was that we must do something. And he's absolutely right. We must do something.
Yeah.
And we cannot afford to have another 4 years like we've had before. Right. All this greatness and all this great stuff that he's talking about, I would really like to see where.
Right.
Where has he improved our country? Because the things that he talked about were just not true.
Right. The jobs and all that kind of thing. And then that'll start a whole nother cycle.
Right. We're about to talk about the whole, but you get the idea.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I got pretty much. So
yeah, that's all I got too.
Debates are coming up. You'll post about when.
Oh yeah. I'll try and dig up all the information, because
this was a lot shorter than the other one.
We said it would be. We said it would be.
Well, please like, subscribe, definitely comment, because we really, really, really want to know